It's my 18th day of captivity. I have removed my adulterous neighbour's vital organs. I have dug through my lawyer's intestinal tract to find a key. And now I've been left here to amputate my own foot. But hey, at least I didn't have to take my top off. Saw is many things. It's paraded as a foundational text in the genre of torture porn, a term coined by David Edelstein in 2006, alongside Hostel, Wolf Creek, and a Serbian film. Though the 2004 film is often credited with kicking off the genre, it's more accurate to say it brought it to a new generation. In reality, the genre existed long before Edelstein created the name that caught on in the mainstream. The 2000s torture offerings followed films like 1978's Faces of Death, 1999's masterpiece Audition, and the infamous Guinea Pig series. And for more underground horror films, this kind of stuff is child's play. Well, not child's play, that's a different franchise. Whatever. Torture as a genre title conjures up a pretty specific image, and by its nature of being incredibly violent, cheaply made, and often poorly acted. But I think Saw gets a bad rap by being associated so strongly with torture. How many times are we gonna have to bleep torture? But nonetheless, it has lasted the test of time, whether it was thought of with reverence or not, and has actually had a pretty strong resurgence in recent years with the release of the 10th film, Saw X, also known as Sawx. Even before the release of Saw X, many newfounds like myself fell in love with the series, as its 2000s vintage is a flavour rarely found in modern cinema. I think there are a few reasons it stands out from its contemporaries, but there is one lesser discussed that really fascinates me, that being how Saw depicts women. So let's talk about it. Hello, I'm Girl on Film. You may call me Rachel Chell or Chelly if you're nasty, and I analyse horror and fantasy film through a feminine lens. I would love for you to join me here on the channel. I am so close to 100,000 subscribers, and I will be allowed out of the basement to celebrate, so I will be forever indebted to you if you help me hit that milestone. One little disclaimer before we start, I will not be able to exemplify my points with the most graphic or relevant footage here today, because I am doing my best to avoid YouTube restrictions. Any way that you feel you can support me and support the channel puts me in a better position to make riskier content. To begin today, let's do the teeniest little rundown of Saw for the uninitiated. Saw was the film of 2004. I was only 9 and I hated horror films, but I vividly remember seeing the DVD cases at the video store and at my friend Annie's house, and having even the simple image of 2 severed fingers strike bone-chilling fear into my heart. With this in mind, I stayed away from Saw for many years, but eventually I had an itch and it needed to be scratched. First came the Trap compilation videos, then the How to Survive various Saw Trap explanations. Soon I was hungrily lapping up each dead meat kill count. Eventually, I watched the films myself. And now they're my comfort movies, the perfect accompaniment for rainy days bundled in bed. I unequivocally love Saw, but this video isn't about me, except it is because it's my video. But I feel my love for Saw is relevant as it lays the ground for a fair analysis of its content. The original Saw slaps. While it doesn't have the world's best acting, it explores every corner of its premise and creates so many hand-over-mouth moments within that. Nothing impresses me more than a film that can create tension and pressure between a few characters in a room. And this was writer Leigh Whannell and director James Wan's original conceit. Created first as a short film, they used their limitations to their advantage and gave us the incredible Saw we now know, all beginning with 2 men waking up next to a body in a bathroom. As the story unravels, they discover they are part of a game designed to test their will to live, orchestrated by the cancer-riddled serial killer John Kramer, the not-so-dead body on the floor. It is immaculate screenwriting, unlike Immaculate, which was terrible screenwriting. Something that stands out to me, and I know it's been commented on by many other fans and critics, in the years since its release is that the original Saw is nowhere near as graphic as we all thought it was at the time. Rather like Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a lot more is implied than actually shown on screen, but it plays with the viewer's mind by hinting at things, cutting away at just the right moment, focusing on certain objects that allude to certain horrors. It creates images that stick with us that never really existed. For instance, Gordon's foot. We do not see that thing sawn off in any detail. It's mostly shots of his face, maddened adrenaline as he chops. Wan and Whannell's initial vision was to create something more akin to Fincher's Seven, a dark noir detective story responsible for the remaining cop plot that takes up about a third to half of most Saw films. But perhaps due to budget and performance limitations, the film was largely received as a nasty, trashy horror offering. Nonetheless, it boosted the careers of Wan and Whannell, and I'm so glad it did. I'm not the biggest fan of James Wan's films, like the Conjuring universe and Insidious films, but it's undeniable that he has contributed a lot to mainstream horror over the last 20 years and in some ways kept it alive. And if 2021's Malignant is anything to go by, he'll keep making campy, over-the-top horror for a long time to come. As for Leigh Whannell, I have such an adoration for this man, and I actually got to meet him at a Wolfman screening last year, which was so special, and he has proved himself tenfold with 2020's Invisible Man, which he both wrote and directed. So aside from bringing us Saw, this franchise also brought us two great filmmakers who have made a major impact on the horror industry. We'll dig into the Saw sequels a little later on, but the gist of the rest of the series is that there are many highs and lows as Wan and Whannell parted from the series other than their role as producers. But as far as I'm concerned, Saws 1 and 2 are perfect films, with 3 and 6 being worthy follow-ups. As the series continued, releasing every Halloween for almost 10 years, they did become increasingly trap-focused and violent, becoming the films people expected them to be. The cop plots became rather like a TV soap, filled with silly twists and way too many interlinking characters. But even at its worst, Saw has an earnest campiness that makes it worthwhile. Apart from Jigsaw, that film does not serve any camp, intentional or otherwise, and is probably the series' most unwatchable entry. As for the rest, there's just something about them. Je ne sais quoi. I can't argue by any stretch that Saw is some feminist masterpiece like Jennifer's Body or Raw, or that it connects with me emotionally, specifically on the grounds of being a woman. But it does a lot right. It certainly avoids exploiting women to the degree we see in a lot of other 2000s horror, and in the genre of horror where women so often get the bad end of the sawn-off shotgun, that matters. So what does sexism in horror look like? If he wants to know what misogyny looks like in modern Australia, he doesn't need a motion in the House of Representatives, he needs a mirror. Thank you, Julia Gillard. A prime example of a filmmaker who imbues his work with sexism is Eli Roth. Every Roth film, bar that one random kids movie he made about a magic clock, is overloaded with topless and nude women. Bimbos with no personalities who exist just to be ogled at. Women who throw themselves constantly at male characters. Watching Hostel, often seen as a spiritual sibling of Saw, exemplifies this to an unbelievable degree. Ow! Oh my god, I just put my hand through a nail. I was almost laughing at the blatancy with which Roth conducts himself as a director. It's like he's never seen boobs before, so takes every opportunity on set to make sure they're served to him on a platter. It's one of the most embarrassing ways to out yourself as a sexually unfulfilled flop that I've ever encountered. And his behind-the-scenes antics are just as misogynistic as what he puts to screen. In 2013, MovieMaker.com published an article by Roth titled "Things I've Learned," in which he said, quote, Hire really attractive stand-ins. Crew members are horny. They get frustrated that it's not the 1980s anymore and that there are sexual harassment laws that prevent them from hitting on every girl at work. But movie sets are still kind of fair game. And later on in the piece, on Hostel and Hostel Part 2, I made sure that I had beautiful stand-ins, and the crew loved it. They've learned not to go after cast members because they'll get in trouble with the producers or a jealous director, ahem. So the stand-ins keep them happy. A smile from a pretty girl goes a long, long, long way. This may have been a while ago, but he hasn't really shown he has grown in any leaps and bounds, and his unwillingness to learn is pretty detestable. He has claimed that both Hostel 2 and Knock Knock are feminist films, but looking at the end products, these claims are beyond misguided. They're insulting. His best attempt at feminism is still topless 20-year-olds, but this time they're torturing men. Incredible work, Eli. Roth, sadly, is no outlier in horror history, with the 2000s a particularly low moment for depictions of women in horror. With the Hays Code long behind us, whatever the almost exclusively male directors dreamt up could be put to screen, and young women were preened, displayed, and spliced on an endless factory line. It was sadly the norm of the era. Given the hordes of Caucasian businessmen funding Hollywood and the boys club they entrusted their money to, no one with any power gave a second thought to how these depictions impacted women. And of course, there is even worse stuff out there when looking for examples of sexism in horror. I highly recommend this excellent video by Brano Manda that explores the implicit sexism of Megan is Missing's voyeuristic framing. These days, we might feel like we have outgrown a lot of this inherent misogyny on screen, but plenty of new horror offerings like the Pooh, Blood and Honey and Terrifier movies have some pretty sexist and mean-spirited kills. Bikini and underwear-clad women are humiliated and hacked to pieces. The camera is taking its time to explore their bodies and their terror. And how does Saw, a torture film that puts women through numerous atrocities, avoid falling into these same traps? If you have a quick flick through the first 3 films, you will note that we have no sex scenes. No girls in hot tubs hanging out with lead detectives. No half-naked women that John is testing his contraptions on. We have guys in dirty bathrooms and policemen in suits. When there is a rare instance of nudity, it's reasonably sterile in the way that it is shot. The human popsicle death, for instance, where a woman is sprayed with water in a freezer till she is frozen into a block of ice, really doesn't sexualize her body. She definitely didn't need to be naked, none of the men in their traps are. But there is no water dripping over her nips or shots of her face being blasted with the hose, simulating something else. They also chose an actress whose body is pretty average, no massive bum or boobs, to make the scene feel like a fantasy. The gagging of Saw 4's Streetwalker is on the more extreme end of the sexualized deaths in early Saw, but she is at least clothed, and the camera doesn't relish the parts of her body that are on display, nor is she positioned to simulate an explicit act a la Paris Hilton's death in House of Wax. It could be argued that the amount of women in Saw who are sex workers is sexist in itself, but significantly, not once is one of these characters placed in an intimate scene. Them being ladies of the night is not an excuse to get their clothes off. It's the justification for Kramer to select them as moral wrongdoers. And he is wrong to do so, but this is the same man who puts people in traps for smoking and taking antidepressants. I would be absolutely if I were in this universe. Other allusions to sex, like cheating, are not visualized in the series with explicit scenes. Instead, we get scenes like Lynn lying in bed with her lover. In fact, if you Google Saw nude scenes or Saw sex scenes, as I did, you only get shots of the human popsicle and a character called Dina, who we will discuss in the next section. There is nothing to go at here if you're a horny teenage boy in 2007 looking for spank bank currency on the family computer. And for that, I applaud Juan and Winnell. Saw also doesn't contain any sex-based violence at all. Unless I'm wrong. Am I wrong? I think that's correct. subject. SA is rife in the horror genre. I've discussed it in depth twice on my channel in my revenge video and Hot Girls Die video, and it would not be out of step with its contemporaries if Saw had included scenes of SA. In moments across the series where other directors may have inserted scenes of sexual violence, Juan and Winell never go there. Situations like Gordon's wife being held captive by Zepp in Saw I, or the attractive sex worker Addison being alone in a secluded room with any of the men in Saw II. Really, any time a woman is in a trap might have been used as a setup to see her SA'd in a lesser film. Another thumbs up for Saw is that we don't see a disproportionate amount of women tortured. And for the most part, the torture they experience is no more graphic or demeaning than the men who get bound and bisected or drowned in rotting pig flesh. That one is my all-timer, like worst Saw trap. Lord take me any other way. In general, across the Saw series, we see violence mostly enacted on men. And I do think there is a different issue here, in that men get so much more screen time, and so many generic roles like cops and doctors always go to men, as they tend to in almost every film ever made. But at least it means we don't see extensive graphic violence that targets women. Essentially, Saw had every opportunity if it wanted to be pervy, sexist, and gross. It would have gone down fine at the time, based on mid-2000s societal norms, horror audiences, and its cinematic contemporaries. Another key to Saw's status as a feminist masterwork is that beyond not shoving nude mangled women's bodies down our throats, it actively gave us a few baddies. The women of Saw are legendary in our community. Detective Alison Kerry, played by Dina Meyer, is probably the best character in Saw, or at least my favorite. She is highly skilled, cool-headed, the closest of all of the cops to understanding Jigsaw's psychology, not stripped of her femininity, nor is it amped up. She has gorgeous copper curls and impressively buff biceps. The only crime committed against Kerry is that she didn't get nearly enough screen time. I understand that they didn't know at the time how many films they would make, but given that we ended up with 10 movies, it is a travesty that she wasn't in more of them, and it would have been so cool to see Kerry as a protagonist. But unless they do some powerfully stupid retconning in a future installment, we will sadly never get to see this. In the world of the film, Kerry's demise happens at the hands of a true series icon, Amanda. Amanda is the first character to appear on screen in the Saw franchise. She's the first victim of the ever-influential reverse bear trap. Amanda, like Alison Kerry, is allowed to be a person first over a woman. Her sexuality or femininity is never a focus. She has emotional depth. She has a fully fledged backstory. She plays a super significant role in the story. And we can't forget her wigs. Shout out to Amanda's wig stylist. I cannot imagine that you are employed, but wherever you are, I hope you're happy. That's so mean. And actually, speaking of Amanda, I have never understood the fear of the needle pit. I guess I'm just not perturbed by needles, but why is that on so many worst trap lists? Enlighten me, please, below in the comments. Not whatever. Finally, Saw 3 gave us Lynn Denlin. Like Kerry and Amanda, she's smart, resourceful, given depth, and still, they all feel completely unique from each other, and none are presented with hollow girl boss ideology. Lynn is an adulterer, but this isn't an unnecessary characteristic placed on her to paint her as a slut. It doesn't change how she is clothed or filmed, and it directly impacts the events of the film and serves, spoilers, one of the series' greatest twists. Before twists just became, remember this person from this movie? It turns out they like dressing as Peppa Pig in their spare time too. All things considered, even if the Saw franchise doesn't feature women in large roles, it doesn't objectify women or indulge in genre tropes that see excessive violence against women. Dare I even say that this 2004 incepted horror franchise positively depicts women. Saw is for the girls. Girl on film approved. That is until Saw VII is. But before we get to the entry that undoubtedly gets the most flack for its overt sexism, it's not the first Saw movie that has questionable ethics in regards to its treatment of women. Somewhere along the production line, as hogs were slung into meat grinders and bottles inexplicably propelled like bullets into an open-plan room, things went a little awry. Enter Saw V. Now, there's nothing on the surface that seems especially concerning about Saw V, but the behind-the-scenes production is where the cracks begin to show. This Saw film sees the Fatal Five take on a series of consecutive traps as a group. In their first trap, they wake with collars around their necks, with a contraption that will yank them back into a blade against the wall if they don't retrieve a key in front of them. The trick is that all their collars are attached to the same length of cord, so they have to go one at a time. When the timer is up, one of the women is still attached and is swiftly decapitated. Nothing crazy by Saw standards. But in their Hot Sauce Summer series, Dead Meat podcast host James explained that initially the other two female characters were supposed to lose their shirts in this trap and continue losing clothing until they were just down to their bras and underwear. But when producers realized Julie Benz and Megan Good were respectable actresses, they changed this. Now, I could not find anything online to substantiate this claim. James said he had read it, and the Dead Meat podcast is very well researched and a fairly accountable platform. It also says this on the Saw V wiki, but without a legitimate source, it has to be taken with a pinch of salt. If true, however, it's pretty gross. The film was written by Patrick Melton and Marcus Dunstan, who also wrote 4, 6, and 7. It's notable that 4 first introduced the scalping seat, which was probably the first trap in the series that felt somewhat sexualized. 6 is a great film, but 7 is without a doubt the worst in its treatment of women, so it's believable that Melton and Dunstan could have written this way. Aside from how it would have appeared on screen, James and Chelsea also pointed out in their podcast how disrespectful it would have been for the writers to assume that the actresses they hired wouldn't have taken their roles seriously, as if they were happily signing up to be warm bodies and had no talent or ambition. Just another way sexism ekes into the industry, a la Eli Roth's eye candy rules. And with that out of the way, let's get to the meat of this section. Saw VII, written by Melton and Dunstan and directed by Kevin Gruett, is noticeably more unpleasant than the other films, targeting much of its gooey wrath at its women. Gooey wrath. Right from the opening scene, things feel a little different. We start with a woman called Dina, strapped up in a public place with the two men she's been seeing beneath her, controlling a blade that they can either push at each other or leave in the middle to slice her in half. Showing the kind of moral flop of a woman she is, she cheers on whoever is winning the game until both men decide to kill her for cheating on them both. The way she's strung up feels icky. Her body is more exposed than we usually see in Saw movies. The straps arranged in such a way that they push her boobs up and leaving them sort of hanging out. It's also noticeable that most, if not all, trap victims ultimately have a vague connection to or have had an encounter with Jigsaw or Hoffman. But Dina is just a random girl and they made no effort to connect it. Interesting to me that they were so keen to get this trap on screen that they overlooked existing rules of the series. And I'm not saying Dina was in the right, but I'm intrigued that they make such a deal out of her being a cheating hussy, and that being the reason she's placed in a trap that's supposed to make her more grateful for her life. Because you know who else cheated in Saw? Lawrence Gordon. And we don't see him strung up in the hit me baby one more time get up, do we? Our main trap plot sees scammer Bobby Dagan, who claims to have been a Jigsaw victim and is making money off of selling his story, attempt to save his team from various horrific deaths. And the women on Bobby's team get some of the most vicious deaths across all the films, particularly heavy on throat destruction. Now that's a category if I've ever heard one. Obviously there are so many traps across the Saw series, but all the women here are in contraptions where they are strapped into position with things pushed into or pulled out of them. Bobby's male team member dies from a fall. His female publicist dies with mascara streaming down her face, bound in a straitjacket, being screamed at to shut the f*** up, while a fishhook is pulled out of her throat and 4 metal pipes penetrate it from the outside. It feels a little different. In general, in Saw VII, it stands out to me that not a single woman in a trap gets the opportunity to save herself. They are all at the whim of men in their life who either hate them or care more about themselves. Women in Saw VII are silent bodies with no autonomy, which makes the torture feel different to, say, Saw II or Saw X. In Bobby's final trap, we get what is widely considered to be the Saw series' most mean-spirited kill. Bobby's wife Joyce is burnt alive in the medieval torture device, the Brazen Bull, when her husband fails to complete the game that he said he did in his book. Again, she's another character in a trap because of her husband, and she has no means to escape herself. And is this outright sexist? Not if you focus your argument on the abundance of men tortured in the series. It's also not explicitly sexual in that she is fully clothed and not in any way being physically touched by a man. But as with other traps in Saw VII, it's the nuances that make all the difference. It's the way she's tied up and pulled down to her knees, tears streaming down herself, forced into a position that in another situation might welcome an entry of sorts. And they do not cut away from her burning alive. This is the Saw film that people think Saw is going to be. It's nasty and cruel. And this shift is sometimes traced back to producer Mark Tuck. Tuck and Betsy Russell, who plays John Kramer's wife Jill, were engaged and broke it off before Saw VII was made, a movie in which Jill is ripped to pieces twice. And it would be poor detective work to claim that Tuck is responsible for all of the sexism here, but it does colour the film. And in what I'd say is a darn bad look for Tuck, the treatment of Jill is outright shocking even for a Saw movie, a series that gave us Amanda and Detective Kerry. In Saw VII, Jill is constantly demeaned by men. Repeatedly called stupid and crazy by Detective Gibson, who is supposed to be protecting her, she is beaten and called a by Hoffman before he gleefully watches her die in the reverse bear trap. We also get a dream sequence of her in only a tank top and undies, tied up by the wrists and feet, being torn to smithereens. According again to James from Dead Meat, when he went through frame by frame for the kill count, he said that you can see her tit being ripped off and flying at the camera in glorious 3D. Like, why did we lower ourselves to this, boys? No one was asking for this. And Jill as a character really did not deserve to suffer. This character who lost her baby and saw her partner effectively go mad is for some reason the main target of what at this point was supposed to be the series' final film's vitriol. It also, in my opinion, doesn't feel completely justified for Hoffman to hate her so much. Yes, she tried to kill him, but they had no pre-existing relationship. She was just acting on John's orders. Their relationship, as depicted in the film, is incredibly shallow, and Jill really has no autonomy. She's basically losing the entire time. Never the cat, always the mouse. But for some reason, she is Hoffman's final adversary, and the film's near-final triumph is to see her head split open like a watermelon. Jill does not get to be a hero or get to be saved by Gordon, who was told to watch over her. Why did the writers not have Gordon swoop in and bear trap Hoffman and let her live? Instead, she dies in the series' most anticipated trap, while Hoffman is left to live. Trapped in the bathroom, yes, but in one piece. Whether you see outright sexism in the treatment of the women of Saw VII or not, it's undeniable that the women here certainly weren't awarded depth, let alone power. The characters are effectively props, written by men to drive male stories forward. Now, who else has attended SawCon? SawCon these nuts. So Saw 3D, the final chapter, left a sour taste, but it was not, in fact, the final chapter. Jigsaw and Spiral were eked out over the next decade, both non-entities as far as critical analysis is concerned, and then a light shining brightly at the end of the tunnel. Saw X came to our screens in 2023, and it lifted the series to some of its greatest heights. The 10th installment pivoted its focus from the police force to its central antagonist, John Kramer, a man who insists killing is distasteful, while demanding people lose life-threatening amounts of blood for him and trapping them in rooms they could never escape. It's actually a prequel to films 3 onwards and sees John seeking an off-the-books cancer treatment to remove his tumor at a temporary clinic in Mexico. Major spoilers, as this film has a twist. Ooh. After his surgery, he discovers that he has been scammed by the head doctor Cecilia Peterson and her team. They staged his surgery, took his life savings, and ran. Not only that, but John discovers that they have done this to tens of people, with Cecilia pocketing the majority of the money. Now, you know our John. He believes bad people deserve to be punished. So the scam artists become the new target, but there's more nuance here than just seeing a group of nasties put through torture traps. All the members of the team are locals to the area with low-paying jobs or addictions to fund, people who are struggling and ultimately being used as well. The film does an amazing job of making us really feel for the characters and hope they can beat the traps, while also feeling for John. And so much of this comes down to having a truly evil figurehead in Cecilia. Cecilia is arguably Saw's first proper female villain. Amanda and Jill have moments of antagonism, but Cecilia is cruel through and through. She does try to help her team survive their traps, but when she realizes that her one survival strategy involves sacrificing them, she's more than willing to do so without a second thought. I loved seeing a female villain in Saw. Someone so unquestionably evil, but equally intelligent, practical, quick thinking, manipulative, and frighteningly good at masking their true motives with a calming sincerity. She has the Amy Dunn thing, cruelty in a way that utilizes femininity, and it's fascinating to watch that. It feels nuanced and fresh. She's empowered without being a cringy girl boss, and she's strong without being Lara Croft. Not all feminist icons should be role models. Let women be evil. The results are fantastic. Likewise, there is a balance in her general presentation. As with many of the other women of Saw, her clothing is fairly modest and covered up. She's very beautiful, but not a product of the kind of Hollywood perfection that makes women doubt themselves and run out to get surgery, nor is she a prim and proper psycho biddy or disfigured monster. She just looks like a smart, sophisticated woman. No bad taste left in the audience's mouth, unless you are Gwyneth Paltrow, in which case you might be feeling a little bit targeted. Beyond having this fabulous female villain, we have 3 other significant female roles. This means the cast is pretty much 50-50 men and women, which is sadly a very rare occurrence even today, unless a film is touted as female-focused, something like Little Women, which I love. Valentina and Gabriella are 2 of the members of the scam team, and both have a really impactful presence in the film. Not necessarily on the plot, but on the audience's emotional journey. You get given a lot of their lives in a short space of time. You understand their motives, and not related to the film's gender ideology, but they also used a lot of local actors. I believe this whole team were actors local to Mexico, which I think is really cool. Unlike the female victims of Saw VII, here they are not sexualized. Even Valentina, who is a prostitute, her costume and trap do not play into this. My girl has on a wrap top, and they went out of her way to make sure there was a tank top underneath it. So there is no cleavage here, only the gore to focus on. Likewise, Gabriella is in jeans and a fur coat for most of the movie. And while her trap sees her flung around, they didn't choose to bind her by both wrists or with a gag on, or in ways that simulate other activities as they've done in lesser Saw entries. And of course we get round 10 Amanda in another spectacularly harrowing wig. I remember taking notes in the cinema when I saw Saw X, and the majority of notes that I took were about Amanda's wig, one of which being that it looks more like she's pretending to be Daniel, Eric Matthews' son from Saw 2, than any previous iterations of herself. But yeah, our girl is here from the mothership. She's great, she gets loads of screen time, and never has to do anything demeaning. Woo! So along with a strong emotional arc, memorable traps, and a standout villain, Saw X was a return to form, even beating it when it came to its treatment of women. Beating its form? Okay. So, is Saw a feminist masterpiece? Or is this just wishful thinking? When it comes to the franchise's representation of women, it certainly doesn't succeed from an intersectional perspective. That is to say, it's not especially racially diverse. Shout out to season 1 Scream Queens winner who deserved so much more screen time. It's blatantly not body diverse. It's not canonically queer. Most of our on-screen Saw goyles are thin, white or white passing, cis women. And you know, any film that sticks to that too closely could do better. When it comes to intersectionality, if only thin white women are winning, it's not a win for women. It's really interesting to see a long-standing series like this evolve and reflect cultural norms of the time. And my hope, given what we got with Saw X, is that Saw has the power to be a positive space for women of every kind. In the male-dominated, often sexist genre of horror, that's incredibly meaningful. However, Saw XI, which would have been handled by the same team as Saw X, was scrapped as Blumhouse acquired the series. And I'm gonna be honest, this is not a production company that I trust to make good movies, nor to understand the position that women in this industry are in. In 2018, Jason Blum famously said, "There are not a lot of female directors, period, and even less who are inclined to do horror," which is just numbskullery, if that is a term. I might have just made that up. Though he swiftly apologized, that quote makes it clear to me that he is the kind of producer who is only having conversations about the industry with other men, and has a fundamental disinterest in female filmmakers. He may post-apology see them as fulfilling some sort of socio-political contract, but that's about it. So, that's how I feel about this iconic series summed up. We came, we saw, we conquered, not necessarily in that order. I will love these films forever, and I hope this video is able to illuminate to people somewhat concretely what can make a film feel sexist or not. All the best to my favourite cousins, Lee Winnell and James Wan, and that's it for Men Writing Women, the Saw series. I just remembered I didn't talk about Spiral at all in this video, and that's probably all that needs to be said about Spiral. And that is that. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you're having a very Merry Christmas. Buy someone in need a sandwich, do something nice for your neighbor, and support me by giving this video a little like and sharing it around. My next essay is going to be quite different in tone, much less horror, much more girlhood, but obviously it's me, so it's still going to be somewhat morbid, but I'm really excited to share it with you guys, so please subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you see it. And check your subscriptions feed. My mum told me recently that she never goes to her subscription tab. And I was like, then that's why you're not seeing the videos of people you subscribe to, because your homepage is showing you other stuff. Anyway, God, you're really fired up. If you got all this way, chuck a little Saw related emoji in the comments. Thank you and goodbye.